Good morning and welcome to my channel. I'm Jennifer and this is A Country Life, and I am going to be making today a whole lot of crusty mini loaves. I've shared this on my channel before. However, recently I have received a couple requests from people either looking for that recipe, they can't find it, or just wanting a little bit more information about bread baking, starting with a bread machine. So let me give you a peek at the finished product so you know what you're in for. So of course there's a lot of ways to make bread. You can do the hand kneading of the bread. You can put it in a KitchenAid. My favorite way to make bread is to just use my bread machine for the dough cycle because it saves me time. I can put all the ingredients in there. The machine will do its job. It'll do the first rising, and then it beeps and it lets me know it's time to shape it and let it rise again. And your bread machine does not have to be fancy. Here's my bread machine. The lid is broken. It does not stay onto these little pieces anymore, but it still gets the job done. I just did a batch of the crusty mini loaves and now I'm on to the second batch. So what I always do is I just select the dough setting. I have a select button and I just boom, 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 boom until I get to number 7, which is dough, and then I hit start. And my dough cycle goes for 1 hour and 30 minutes, which sounds like a long time, but it seems like the time just flies by when it's doing its thing. So we'll get to this in just a moment. But what I did before, since I knew I was making more, is I just got all of the ingredients, all the dry ingredients into this container here. So here is the original recipe here for crusty mini loaves. I have 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I have 2.5 cups of bread flour. So this is the bread flour that I usually pick up because it's just what I end up finding in my store. And it's the Pillsbury's Best bread flour. Fluff it, or kind of, I like to shake it up a little bit to get it really fluffy. You don't want to use like compressed flour or even tap it or anything, tap your measuring cup. You just want nice loosened flour. So 2.5 cups of bread flour and then 1/2 cup of these All-Bran sticks is what I call them. And I also have in here 1.5 teaspoons of just regular dry yeast. So into the bread machine, I need to put 1 cup plus 1 tablespoon of warm water. Now you don't want it to feel like bath warm, not that kind of warm. You just want to run your sink until your hand just says, oh, that's not icy cold. If you want to be very precise, you can do that. And most recipes will give a temperature that the water should be at. This recipe says 70 to 80 degrees, which basically means your hand just doesn't really notice it to be cold, but it also doesn't notice it to feel warm. Some recipes will call for 110 to 115 degree water. In that case, your hand is going to notice it feeling just a bit warm. I don't always take the temperature of my water, but the major thing is you don't want it too hot. It's always better to go a little bit cool than too hot, because too hot will just kill that yeast right away, and then you'll have, it'll be a disaster. Now I'm going to put my dry ingredients in. Your bread machine will tell you to add everything according to like the order that it's listed, but I found that when I do it like this, or if I add it in the order straight to the bread pan, it doesn't make any difference. I'm just going to pour all of my ingredients in, give it a little tap. I want all of that out. I'm going to get this lid on. I kind of have to, and you can pick up inexpensive bread machines from Goodwill or like a St. Vincent de Paul or any kind of like thrift shop. Just look around. All they really have to do is, the agitator just has to still work, but other than that, it does not have to be a fancy one. So here we go. Let's click select. Oh, I could have just hit start because it was already at there. So number 7 is my dough cycle. Start. So my goal is to always come back in about 5 or 10 minutes and check it and see if it needs a little bit extra water. You can always add like an extra teaspoon if it looks too dry, or an extra teaspoon of flour if it looks too wet. I do like to put an apron on because I really don't want to get oil on me.
Oil you?
Okay, this has already been rising a little bit more. So what I like to do, I like to actually put a little oil on my counter.
I would.
And then I like to just Not right now, Joe. This is Mama's job, okay? And I like to just kind of knead it a little bit. So for these mini loaves, I'm just going to divide this into 4 equal-ish parts. This one looks a little smaller, so I'm going to pull some off of here. And then we're just going to kind of and these are kind of a rustic kind of a bread. They have bumps and sometimes little grooves, you know, they're not perfectly, you know, it's not like sandwich bread where it's going to have this super, super smooth top. And that's the nice thing about this bread. It's very, very forgiving. I just kind of form it into a little loaf. And I'm placing it right now onto a greased cookie sheet. I like to make sure that my bread has a little bit of oil on the outside. And you can roll it. Everyone has their own way. You do not have to do it this way. But this is just what I find works for me. Okay, I like the way that looks. Just into kind of a nice little oval. I kind of like all my ends to be tucked under. I think you just get a really pretty looking loaf that way. Okay, so there's another one. Basically, they're going to be the size of a medium potato. Now I have just like a little pair of these Springy kitchen shears. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. I'm just going to put a cloth over top now. And a lot of times what I'll do from here is if I have a sunshiny place in my dining room, I will just kind of like set it on the table or set it on a chair. And there is some sunshine coming in, so I think I'll do that. Otherwise, if I'm running my stove, I'll put it on top of the stove so it gets kind of warm. I also will sometimes set a chair over one of my heat vents, and then I'll just set it there. But you just want to let it rise someplace that's warm but not hot. You don't want hot, hot air blowing on it. Again, it may kill the yeast. And if I need to, if the sun kind of changes angle, I will sometimes come over and just move my chair where it needs to be so it's still in the sunshine. When you're brushing on the egg wash, you want to be real gentle because you don't want to break the rise. And what I mean by that is you don't want to push so hard that your bread sinks. This is a pretty hardy dough. Some breads are very, very delicate, and you don't even want to bump them when you're putting them into the oven. Like one time I was putting a loaf of bread into the oven, and I didn't have it up high enough, and I banged the whole side of the loaf pan against the rack with some force. I was really going to get that loaf pan on that rack. Well, I didn't get it on it. I ran it into it, and the bread went poof, it just sunk. So this is what the mini loaves look like before going into the oven, and I have to say that we have found that we really like the everything bagel seasoning on here rather than just poppy seeds or sesame seeds, because this has a little salt, and there is something about that addition of a little bit of salt that just like gets cooked onto the crust or baked onto the crust. It's so delicious. So I'm going to put these in for only about 18 minutes. They bake up really fast because they're small, so only 18 minutes. 18 minutes later, and the bread is now out of the oven, and oh my goodness, if you just wait about 5 or 10 minutes and then slice it, it is so delicious because it is just like, they're called crusty mini loaves, but I don't think they're overly crusty. I think it actually makes a pretty nice soft loaf. Look at those. They are so, so delicious. Yeah, the bottoms look nice and they're just beautiful and delicious. And the nice thing about these is that you can even rename it rustic bread if you want, because it has kind of that rustic look. So no one expects these to be just like a gorgeous, I think they're gorgeous, but no one is expecting these to come out looking perfectly shaped or anything. Look at this one. It kind of like, I must not have had that folded under all the way, so it kind of lifted a little, but that's okay. It's still so delicious. I have the other 4 ready to go, so I'm going to get those off to a cooling rack, put these on, and I'll do the same exact thing. I'm going to snip. Should I do it for you right now so you can see it again? So we just snip, 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 and as it rises, those little snips kind of spread a little and just give it a pretty look to the top. Once this has risen for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on where you put it and how warm it is, which it's not going to take too long for me because my oven is warm. I'm just going to set it right on top of the oven and it will rise fairly quickly. Then I brush it with that egg wash. You saw it before that I brushed it. It's just an egg yolk with a little splash of water just to kind of thin it out, make it just spreadable. You're just trying to make it so you can spread it over there. And then just sprinkle on the everything bagel. You don't have to sprinkle on the everything bagel. You could do just straight poppy seeds or sesame seeds, or you could do minced dried onion if you want, or you could just put on salt, or if you like a little bit more of like a pepper, I think a salt, like a flaky salt and a freshly ground black pepper would be delicious on the top of this too. You could put a garlic salt, really anything, but I think that anything that has a little bit of salt in it, it just really, really sets the flavor off. All right, and what goes better with bread? Did anybody say chicken noodle soup? Yes, chicken noodle soup. It's Warren's birthday today, and so I'm gonna make a great big pot of chicken noodle soup. I've got the fancy Crusty noodles because that is what we all love so much. And boy, I don't know, pasta lately has been weird. I've gotten a couple different brands. One of them were too hard, one was so soft and just kind of fell apart. Anyway, I went with the expensive Crusty noodles for today. So let me go and get my chicken in. Let me get my stock in, which I already made the other day. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to keep it very simple. A little bit of minced onion in there, not dried, but fresh minced onion. And then some good size chunks of carrots and celery. And that is going to be chicken noodle soup. Very, very, very simple. If I were making it the way I want the soup, I would have peas and green beans and corn and the carrots and the celery and onion, and heck, I would be fine putting in any, like a little cabbage. I would put it just basically chicken vegetable soup, and then we could throw in the noodles or leave the noodles out. It wouldn't matter to me. But it's not my birthday. It's Warren's birthday, and we're gonna do it the way he likes it, which is very, very simple. How I like to frost a cake. So I have the frosting on a spatula. I take a small amount on my metal spatula, and then I just very carefully smooth it by taking a small amount at a time. So this great big pot I just put up here, this, I don't even know how many quarts it is, but it is what we always refer to as the corn kettle, because if we are going to make a whole lot of corn on the cob, this is the huge pot we put it into. It's an old Army surplus pot, probably. Yeah, there is nothing on the bottom. It's probably 60 plus years old, I would think. Anyway, so I have my bone broth here. This is the chicken bone broth. I am going to skim off this little bit of fat on the top. The rest of it is going to go into this huge pot right here. And then I will have to add a little bit more seasonings, I'm sure, because I added salt, peppercorns, and a bay leaf to that when I cooked down the bone broth. But I know I'm going to have to add some more seasonings, and probably I'm probably going to have to add a lot more water to it as well, because I want to make this pot close to full, like 3/4 full. Great, great big pot of soup. I filled this up with water and I'm just going to add all of that as well. I'm going to put in 1 bay leaf. I'm also going to put in just a little sprinkle of thyme here. And, oh, my marjoram, is it not open? Oh yeah, I just didn't have the sprinkle part. And a little bit of marjoram. I think these are all great flavors. My chicken is frozen because I had pulled all this off the bone over the weekend and I just was not sure what day I was going to use it this week, so I popped it into the freezer and I didn't take it out of the freezer last night. So it's frozen, not a big deal. It's already shredded and, you know, chopped up. It'll thaw quickly. So let me just get that, and it comes right out. I'm just gonna put that right in here, all of that chicken. Originally, I thought when I made that chicken that I would make it into 2 different meals, but since we're doing this for Warren's birthday supper, and some of our older kids are gonna be able to make it home, some of them that don't work, things like that, will be able to make it home tonight. So yeah, so there's gonna be more people eating than just us 6. I'm gonna put this on the stove now and let this start coming to a simmer while I chop up the veggies.